At 82, I've certainly learned a lot about life, but there's one particular decision that I deeply regret: moving into a nursing home. At the time, it genuinely seemed like the right choice, and my family actively encouraged it, promising that I'd have all the attentive care and consistent comfort I could possibly need. I sincerely believed them, but once I actually got there, I quickly realized that the stark reality of nursing home life was nothing like what I had so optimistically imagined. I know that many of you watching today might be seriously thinking about this very same option, whether for yourself or for a beloved family member. Perhaps you instinctively feel like it's the safest decision, or maybe you've simply been told that it will somehow make life easier for everyone involved. But before you take that life-altering step, I want to openly share 6 key things that I desperately wish someone had told me before I moved in. Because the hard truth is that life in a nursing home isn't just about convenience. It fundamentally changes everything. And once you go in, getting back out isn't nearly as simple or straightforward as you might initially think. I want to warmly encourage everyone watching to subscribe to Old Age Wisdom, and feel free to browse our library of content. Please stay with me until the end of this video, because some of these crucial lessons might genuinely surprise you. And if you know someone who is currently considering moving into a nursing home, this video might be exactly what they desperately need to hear before making such a profoundly life-changing decision. Now, let's get started by honestly exploring my very first major regret. Regret 1: losing my independence. The biggest shock I experienced after moving into a nursing home wasn't the noticeably smaller room, the rigid set meal times, or even the unfamiliar faces of the staff and other residents. It was the sudden realization that I had irrevocably lost conscious control over my own daily life. Before I moved in, I had my established routines, my deeply ingrained habits, and the blessed freedom to consciously decide when to wake up, what to eat, and how to spend my days. I could spontaneously take a leisurely walk whenever I felt like it, happily cook my own simple meals in my own familiar kitchen, or just sit quietly in my favorite, comfortable chair with a beloved book. But inside the nursing home, I quickly realized that my time was no longer primarily my own to direct. Everything ran according to a strict schedule that I had absolutely no say in creating. Breakfast was served at a set time, even if I wasn't particularly hungry. Lights out happened at a certain hour, whether I was feeling tired or not. Want to take a walk outside to enjoy the fresh air? You might need to first ask for permission, and you'll likely have to wait until someone is available to assist you. Simple decisions, like what to eat for lunch or even what to wear each day, started feeling like privileges instead of the basic, fundamental choices they once were. I vividly remember my first week there, waking up in a bed that simply didn't feel like mine. I sat up slowly, stretched my stiff muscles, and reached for the book that I had been thoroughly enjoying at home. But when I looked around the drab room, it finally hit me with full force. This wasn't my home. My books, my favorite chair, and all the other small comforts I had consciously spent years collecting were now all gone. In their place were sterile, impersonal walls, a bed I didn't choose, and a hollow feeling that I simply couldn't shake. I was no longer in charge of my own life, and the realization hit me hard. And the hardest part of this slow realization was understanding that, once you willingly give up your precious independence, actually getting it back is almost impossible. You gradually adapt, primarily because you have to. You eventually stop arguing when they tell you what's for dinner. You stop habitually asking if you can go for a walk whenever you feel like it. You slowly learn to fit yourself, as best you can, into their rigid system. But in the long and difficult process, you almost inevitably start losing a little bit of yourself. If you are finding our content useful, we encourage you to subscribe to Old Age Wisdom. If you're seriously considering a nursing home, I strongly urge you to ask yourself, am I truly ready to give up the small freedoms and cherished routines that make my life uniquely mine? Because once they're gone, you'll almost certainly miss them more than you ever thought possible. Regret 2: feeling forgotten. One of the hardest and most unsettling truths about moving into a nursing home is slowly realizing that the entire world outside those walls just keeps moving on without you. When I first arrived, my loving family sincerely reassured me that they would visit often. I genuinely believed them, and in the very beginning, they truly did. My daughter came by at least once a week, my grandchildren visited on weekends, and for a little while, it felt like I still had a solid connection to my old life. But as the months slowly went by, the visits inevitably became less frequent. My daughter eventually started calling instead of coming in person. My grandchildren, as they got older, got increasingly busy with schoolwork and extracurricular activities. Holidays, sadly, were often the hardest. Everyone always promised they'd come to visit, but somehow, plans would invariably change at the very last minute. And suddenly, I would find myself sitting completely alone in a common room, quietly watching the other residents stare longingly at the front door, hopefully wishing that today would finally be the day that someone special remembered them. But sadly, so often, it simply wasn't. It wasn't necessarily that my family stopped loving me. Instead, life just naturally got in the way. When you're not around every day, it's all too easy for people to subconsciously assume that you're doing just fine, that you're fully adjusting, that you somehow don't need as much active attention as you once did. But the unsettling truth is that the longer you stay in a nursing home, the easier it is for people to gradually forget just how much you still desperately need them. I vividly remember one evening, sitting alone in my dimly lit room, holding my phone in my trembling hand, quietly debating whether to actually call my busy son. I certainly didn't want to be a burden. I didn't want to constantly remind him that I was here, quietly waiting for a visit that might honestly never come. So, with a deep sigh, I slowly put the phone back down. And that's when it fully hit me. This was my life now, quietly watching the days slowly go by, constantly hoping that someone would actually remember to include me in their busy lives. If you're finding this video is helpful, please subscribe to Old Age Wisdom, so we can create even more helpful content. If you're seriously thinking about moving into a nursing home, please honestly ask yourself, am I truly prepared for the pervasive loneliness? Because no matter how much your family deeply loves you, once you're essentially out of sight, it's far easier than you think to gradually become tragically out of mind. If you're still watching this video and finding these insights valuable, please let me know by commenting number 2 below. And if you haven't subscribed to Old Age Wisdom yet, I strongly recommend that you subscribe right now and turn on that notification bell so you don't miss any of our future videos. Your unwavering support helps us continue creating valuable content to inform, inspire, and empower you on your journey. Now, let's move forward and explore my third significant regret. Regret 3, losing my sense of purpose. When I initially moved into the nursing home, I mistakenly thought I was just physically changing where I lived. I genuinely didn't realize that I was also fundamentally changing why I even lived. At home, I had various responsibilities, well-established routines, cherished hobbies, and a clear reason to enthusiastically get up each morning. Even the seemingly small things, watering my beloved plants, carefully making my own perfect cup of coffee, or simply tidying up my own personal space, gave me a deep sense of purpose and genuine satisfaction. But in the nursing home, those familiar daily rituals quickly disappeared. Meals were thoughtfully prepared for me, cleaning was efficiently done by someone else, and the precious plants, well, they sadly weren't mine to take care of anymore. At first, I mistakenly told myself that it would be nice to finally relax, free from any nagging chores or responsibilities, just pure, uninterrupted rest. But after just a few weeks, I realized something profoundly important was missing. The long, empty days felt endlessly stretched out, with nothing meaningful to do but passively wait. I saw it happening to other residents, too. People who had once been full of boundless energy and a zest for life now spent their days simply sitting, staring, and quietly waiting for time to simply pass them by. There was a kind man named George, 84 years old, who had been a skilled carpenter his entire life. At home, he was always fixing things, building small projects in his beloved garage, and actively creating with his own hands. But here, in this institutional setting, there were no tools, no engaging projects, nothing for him to physically create. I watched, with a growing sense of sadness, as he slowly withdrew. His hands, once so strong and skilled, now sat idle in his lap. "I feel utterly useless," he poignantly told me one day, and I knew exactly what he meant. When you no longer have something to actively care for, something meaningful to consistently work toward, life inevitably starts to lose its very meaning. The mind gradually slows down, the body inevitably follows, and soon, you start to feel like just another nameless resident in a place where time steadily moves, but nothing truly changes. If the tips and insights in this video have been useful to you, we would genuinely appreciate a subscription to Old Age Wisdom. If you're seriously considering a nursing home, I strongly encourage you to truthfully ask yourself, what gives my life true meaning and enduring purpose? Because once you move in, actively finding or creating purposeful activities isn't nearly as simple as merely filling your time. It's about fiercely fighting to consciously hold on to the things that make you feel genuinely alive. Regret 4. Declining health faster than expected. Before I moved into a nursing home, I was doing remarkably well for my age. I certainly wasn't running any marathons, but I could still take good care of myself, go for reasonably long walks, and prepare my own meals without much difficulty. I had my carefully established little routines that consistently kept me moving, grocery shopping, doing gentle stretches in the mornings, and even just casually walking around the house to keep my legs relatively strong. But once I actually moved in, everything gradually changed. At first, it seemed like I was simply taking it easy, enjoying a well-deserved rest. Meals were routinely brought directly to me, and I no longer had to stand for long periods in the kitchen to cook. If I ever needed anything at all, I could just push a button, and someone would promptly come to help. But what I didn't fully realize at the time was that the less I did for myself, the weaker I slowly became. I stopped consciously moving as much, and soon my legs began to feel noticeably stiffer. I sat more than I used to, and before I consciously knew it, simply getting up from a comfortable chair started feeling like a dreaded chore. The muscles I had diligently spent years maintaining were slowly disappearing faster than I ever expected. And it wasn't just happening to me. I sadly saw it happen to other residents, too. People who initially walked in on their own 2 feet were suddenly relying almost entirely on wheelchairs. People who had once been remarkably independent now needed help with things they had never struggled with before. The more help we were readily given, the more help we seemed to genuinely need. I vividly remember my neighbor Alice, an 81-year-old woman who was remarkably lively and engaged when she first arrived. She used to take daily walks around the facility, always insisting that she wasn't going to intentionally slow down just because of a number. But after only a few months, I sadly noticed she wasn't walking as much. Then she started relying more and more on a walker. Then, eventually, on a wheelchair. One day, she looked directly at me with a deeply troubled expression and pointedly said, "I honestly don't know exactly when it happened, but I feel like I aged 10 years in just a few months." And that's exactly what it felt like. When you consciously stop using your body, you inevitably start slowly losing it. And in a nursing home, where everything is thoughtfully designed to make life as effortless as possible, it's all too easy to inadvertently forget that purposeful movement isn't just about convenience. It's fundamentally about surviving. If I had somehow known how quickly I would lose my physical strength, I would have fought much harder to keep moving, to actively stay engaged, and to consciously push myself, even when I didn't particularly feel like it. Please consider hitting that notification bell so you'll never miss a future upload from Old Age Wisdom. If you're seriously considering a nursing home, ask yourself, will I still genuinely have the intrinsic motivation to consciously keep my body strong and engaged when everything is deliberately set up to make life completely effortless? Because once you allow yourself to slow down and become too sedentary, getting back up and regaining that lost strength isn't nearly as easy as you might currently think. If you're still watching this video and finding these insights valuable, please let me know by commenting number 4 below. And if you haven't subscribed to Old Age Wisdom yet, I highly recommend that you subscribe right now and turn on that notification bell so you don't miss any of our future videos. Your unwavering support helps us continue creating valuable content to inform, inspire, and empower you on your journey. Now, let's move forward and explore my 5th profound regret. I regret 5. The loss of privacy and dignity. One of the things I didn't fully consider before consciously moving into a nursing home was just how much personal privacy I would inevitably lose. At home, I had my own space. I could simply close my bedroom door, sit in peaceful silence if I wanted, and do things entirely on my own terms. But in a nursing home, privacy is often a rare luxury that you don't always get to keep. From the moment I arrived, I felt like I was constantly being watched, staff consistently coming in and out of my room, scheduled room checks, and numerous shared spaces where you're rarely ever truly alone. Even simple things, like getting dressed in the morning or using the restroom, often required someone else's assistance. I know they were just diligently doing their assigned jobs, but it's still not easy to gracefully accept help for tasks you've consciously done independently your entire adult life. I vividly remember my very first week, struggling with the unsettling idea that I now had to actively ask for permission to do things I had previously done without even thinking. Want to take a shower? You might first have to wait until someone is actually available to help you. Need to use the restroom urgently? Sometimes pressing the call button meant waiting longer than you'd like. Even the carefully prepared meal choices were often inexplicably limited. If you didn't particularly like what was on the set menu that day, well, too bad. Those were essentially your only options. And then there was the highly sensitive issue of having roommates. Not everyone gets a private room, and consciously sharing a living space with someone else, someone you didn't personally choose, can be incredibly frustrating. I was fortunate to have a kind and considerate roommate, but I heard troubling stories from others who weren't nearly so fortunate. Some had roommates who were excessively loud, noticeably unclean, or even had significant cognitive issues that made getting restful sleep nearly impossible. And no matter how much you thoughtfully try to personalize your room and make it feel more like home, it's sadly never truly yours. Please consider sharing this old age wisdom video with your loved ones. Dignity is a hard thing to readily lose, and I honestly didn't fully realize how much of mine I'd have to consciously surrender until I was already there. When people knock, but don't always wait for an answer before simply coming in, when you're spoken to like a patient instead of a person, and when your daily routines are almost entirely dictated by a strict schedule that you didn't personally create, it inevitably changes you. You gradually start feeling less like your authentic self and more like just another nameless name on a long list. If you're seriously considering a nursing home, I strongly urge you to carefully ask yourself, am I truly prepared to give up the privacy and personal control I've always enjoyed throughout my entire life? Because once it's knowingly gone, it's exceedingly hard to consciously get back. Regret 6. Realizing it's harder to leave than you think. When I first moved into the nursing home, I sincerely told myself it was simply a temporary situation. I thought I'd willingly give it a try, carefully see how things went, and if I honestly didn't like it, I could always just leave. But what I failed to realize at the time was just how incredibly hard it would truly be to get back out once I was already in. At first, it all seemed deceptively simple. If I didn't like it, I'd just pack up my belongings and go back home. But home simply wasn't the same anymore. My house had been sitting empty for months, and actively maintaining it from a distance quickly became difficult. My well-meaning children had already started making gradual changes, selling things they thoughtfully thought I wouldn't need, and even quietly considering the possibility of renting out the place on a long-term lease. When I tentatively brought up the idea of actually returning to my cherished home, they understandably hesitated. Are you absolutely sure you can safely manage on your own, Mom? Wouldn't it honestly be safer for you to just stay where you are, where there are people to help you 24/7? We just genuinely want what's best for you, and we're honestly not sure this is it. And then there was the very real issue of my growing physical decline. After months of living in a place where I didn't have to cook, clean, or even walk very far each day, I simply wasn't as strong and physically capable as I used to be. The hard-won independence I had once possessed started gradually slipping away, making the idea of moving back home far more daunting than I had ever imagined. I honestly wasn't as confident in my ability to live safely alone, and that quiet fear kept me essentially stuck. I personally met others who had experienced essentially the same difficult situation. They initially thought they'd try the nursing home for just a little while, only to quickly realize that deliberately leaving simply wasn't as easy as they'd initially believed. The longer you consciously stay, the harder it inevitably becomes to effectively adjust to life outside the structured environment. Some people sadly even lost the option entirely. Once their home was sold or their hard-earned savings were completely drained by the exceedingly high cost of care, there was sadly simply no turning back. These are the hard parts that nobody readily tells you about up front. Moving in, at first, feels like a decision you can easily reverse, but for most people, it truly isn't. The nursing home slowly becomes your entire world, and before you know it, the satisfying outside life you once knew so well starts feeling like a distant, fading memory. If you are finding our content helpful, please share old age wisdom with your friends and family. If you're seriously considering moving into a nursing home, please honestly ask yourself, am I genuinely prepared for the very real possibility that, once I knowingly go in, actively leaving might honestly not be as simple as I currently think? Because once you settle in, the barriers to consciously leaving, whether financial, physical, or even emotional, can be far harder to overcome than you currently expect. Final thoughts. Looking back on my life, I certainly don't regret growing older. In fact, I embrace it. But I do deeply regret mistakenly believing that a nursing home was my only viable option for receiving quality care. I willingly walked in expecting reliable comfort, consistent safety, and an overall improved quality of life. But what I tragically found instead was a controlled world that slowly but surely took away my independence, my personal privacy, my enduring sense of purpose, and even my cherished sense of self. Does that mean nursing homes are invariably all bad and should be avoided at all costs? Not necessarily. Some people genuinely need the high level of specialized care that they readily provide. But before you personally make that life-altering decision, please carefully think about everything you're potentially giving up, because once you knowingly move in, your life will almost certainly never be quite the same. If I could somehow do it all over again, I would have fiercely fought harder to remain in my own beloved home. I would have diligently explored more ways to actively get the specific help I needed without fully giving up my personal freedom. And I would have carefully made absolutely sure that I truly, undeniably needed to be there before making such a fundamentally permanent move. And if you're presently facing this challenging decision, I sincerely hope you take the necessary time to consciously ask yourself, is this choice truly what's best for me? Or is it simply what seems easiest or most convenient right now? Because the life you have today, your deeply ingrained routines, your cherished independence, and your valued personal choices are absolutely worth holding on to for as long as you possibly can. Thank you so much for joining me on Old Age Wisdom today. I greatly appreciate your presence and engagement. We'd love to hear from you. Please leave a thoughtful comment below and share just one thing you learned from this discussion and how you realistically plan to use that valuable information in your own life. Your authentic thoughts are incredibly important to us, so please don't hesitate to share them. Reading your insightful comments consistently gives us tremendous motivation and unwavering encouragement to continue creating helpful content that serves you. If you genuinely enjoyed this video and found it particularly helpful, please click that like button and generously share it with your own loved ones. Your thoughtful support truly helps us continue creating valuable content to inform, inspire, and empower you on your own unique journey. Thanks so much for watching Old Age Wisdom, and we sincerely look forward to seeing you in our next empowering video.